In a world full of digital connections and constant social interactions, the idea of solitude might seem terrifying or even undesirable. However, figures like Carl Jung have warned us about the dangers of this condition and its potential to become addictive. But what if I told you that solitude can be more than just a state of isolation? This video delves into the depths of solitude, exploring its nuances and revealing why, in some cases, it's better to be alone than to wish for company. Throughout this journey, we will examine the reflections of thinkers such as Jung, Rousseau, and Nietzsche, unraveling the mysteries and advantages of solitude. Get ready to question your own preconceived notions and discover the transformative power of authenticity found in solitary tranquility. Carl Jung said, "Solitude is dangerous and addictive. Once you realize the peace that exists in it, you no longer want to deal with people." Often people see loners as atypical individuals, people who, for some reason, don't fit well with others. They are seen as having characteristics or qualities that somehow do not align with group norms. In many cases, this is true, as many people who spend most of their time alone have difficulties mingling with others. In some cases, these people are hostile towards the world, which may stem from negative experiences with other human beings. The herd often fears the so-called lone wolf, as this individual is shrouded in mystery, and few know what they are up to. In many cases, being alone has a bad reputation. After all, much of our happiness comes from spending time with other people. While this is true, other people can also be a significant source of suffering. If someone's experiences with others have been repeatedly painful and traumatic, it's no wonder that the individual prefers solitude over company. This video explores the nature of solitude, what Carl Jung and other thinkers have said about it, and why it is better to be alone than to wish for company. Imagine waking up alone, jumping out of bed, going to the kitchen, and opening the fridge. Everything inside is yours. The same applies to the rest of your living space. You've arranged everything to your liking without making compromises. In your quarters, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, and there's no one else to consider. You can act according to your schedule without taking others' preferences into account. You are the absolute ruler of your living space and cherish that unique and irreplaceable freedom. Behind closed doors, solitude is sweet. It's the pleasure of not having to put up with other people who, on the one hand, can enrich our lives in many ways, but on the other hand, can be significant sources of pain. Let's face it, in many cases, it's not the work that makes workplaces toxic, but the people in it. It's not the school itself that leaves some kids unhappy, but the bad teachers and bullies. Human beings have a knack for making each other unhappy, while at the same time we are good at bringing pleasure, comfort, and happiness. Consequently, human interaction is an exchange. The more we interact, the more we face the dark side of our fellow humans. The further we distance ourselves from humanity, the less we confront human toxicity and the stress of dealing with intrusive people. Ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and grumpy, as Marcus Aurelius described the difficult people he encountered daily. It's no surprise that the sage described in the Taoist book, Chuang Tzu, rejected the position of ruler of the kingdom and chose a solitary life in a hut by the river, where he would fish and be at peace. Being alone is a pleasure. When the joy of solitude catches us, it can become addictive. The absence of critical looks, the peace and quiet, the freedom. A man can only truly be himself when he is alone. If you don't love solitude, you won't love freedom, because only when you are alone are you truly free, wrote Schopenhauer. Solitude provides a space where you are not limited by social norms or by the needs and desires of others. There's no one around to tell you what to think and do, and there's no one for whom you need to make compromises. We can walk around, express our opinions without the restraints of political correctness, and indulge in the strangest hobbies. No one will care. Clearly, it's better to be alone, enjoying your own company and all the advantages of being out of others' sight, than to wish for company while suffering their presence. Spending time alone has a deep place in various religious traditions such as Buddhism. Indeed, Buddha urged people to withdraw from social life and considered solitude as the cornerstone of spiritual enlightenment. Carl Jung and many philosophers also recognized the value of solitude. One of them is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who admitted to enjoying solitude, as it allowed him to escape the animosity of humanity while enjoying the smile of nature. Another is Henry David Thoreau, who wrote a book about his experiences living alone in the woods. Let's briefly explore some philosophical insights on solitude. The Rhinoceros Sutra, a Buddhist text about a monk walking alone, delves deeply into the value of solitude. The sutra uses the metaphor of a rhinoceros to show why solitude is essential. In following the Buddhist path, it is advisable to shed the many attachments of life and wander alone like a rhinoceros. The sutra strongly advocates for solitude, suggesting that stepping away from a busy social life can help us see things more clearly and grow as individuals. Some conclusions from this ancient text are that avoiding attachments will benefit a person's spiritual life, since with companionship comes social expectations that can be a great burden. Additionally, sensual pleasures are pleasant at first glance, but they end up leading to suffering. People can exhaust us, and sensual pleasure generally involves an endless pursuit of fulfillment. Having a lot of social interaction also prevents us from doing things that truly benefit us spiritually, like meditation, self-reflection, and contemplating Buddhist teachings. The rhinoceros, in this case, embodies the strong, resilient, and solitary animal that endures life's hardships with equanimity and detachment. The sutra states, having abandoned passion, aversion, delusion, having broken the fetters, unperturbed, at the end of life walk alone like a rhinoceros. Carefreeness and solitude go hand in hand. When we are alone, we can distance ourselves from a world that is often noisy and marked by a pressure to conform. As we wonder, what is this that I'm dealing with? We consider all these rules, customs, traditions, rituals, beliefs, ethics, and values as taken for granted. But why do we follow them? From a distance, as spectators of humanity, you can see more clearly what you are conforming to when you are part of the joke itself. Taoist sages generally detach themselves from the world, turning their backs on society and its rigidity. They sought to return to a purer form, the unlimited, also known as Tao. Solitude was the answer, as being alone protected us from external influences from which we sought liberation. The American philosopher Henry David Thoreau also experienced detachment from society while living alone at Walden Pond as an experiment, which he wrote about in detail in his work Walden. He discovered the pleasure of getting closer to nature, simplicity, and self-sufficiency as a result of spending time alone. Think about it. People are usually constantly distracted. Friends, co-workers, and colleagues demand our attention daily, and if we don't interact directly with them, they will still exist on our phones. All this human noise prevents us from connecting with the cradle that gave us light and to which we will eventually return. That is the Great Mother, the force that works silently at a steady pace, unhurried, nurturing everything. The power of detachment in solitude also applies to the nihilistic approach to life. For Nietzsche, spending time alone was not a matter of spiritual enlightenment or getting closer to nature. He saw solitude as a way to distance himself from a herd contaminated with what he called slave morality, following a value system that disempowers them and essentially turns them into docile sheep, resentful of their shepherds. Nietzsche also criticized the shepherd and their morality, as they were part of the same system of oppression and submission. Thus, as far as Nietzsche was concerned, solitude grants us a way to transcend this system, allowing the creation of new individual values beyond the conventional structure. Solitude allows us to know ourselves, embrace our individuality, and reflect on how we want to live our lives authentically, on our own terms. Therefore, whether seeking spiritual enlightenment, a deeper connection with nature, escaping traditional values and conventional ideas, or creating fertile ground for individual meaning, solitude is our companion. It's no surprise then that many people crave it. It's better to be alone than to wish for company. So we might ask ourselves, Is the longing for solitude because I, as a participant in social life, have a desire to be alone for any reason? In my experience, social interaction is always a give and take. You give a little, you receive a little, but sometimes you may not want to give what you give or receive what you receive. Then, social interaction becomes a burden that costs us more than it benefits. An intimate relationship can be very beneficial and an opportunity for personal growth, but it also takes away the freedom of being single, the solitude and peace of not having someone significant to consider. A vibrant social life can be a lot of fun, but the more we socialize, the less time we have for things like meditation and spiritual growth, as described in the Rhinoceros Sutra. Being part of a group or belief system can provide us with support, meaning, and a sense of community, but it compromises the authenticity and individuality that philosophers like Emerson and Nietzsche so much celebrate. Being involved with humanity in general can be excellent in many areas, but often this comes at the expense of our connection with nature, which the Taoist sages and philosopher Henry David Thoreau sought. Social interaction has a price, sometimes that price is very high, but solitude also has a price, especially when it's excessive and undesired. Depending on the individual, staying away from people for too long can be detrimental. Solitude and isolation are a growing problem. Some people crave social interaction, but struggle to obtain it. So yes, it's better to be alone than to wish for company, but it's also better not to be alone than to wish you weren't. There is a balance to be found, and in my experience, this balance is not something static. It depends on who I am, my life situation, and my needs at a given time. It requires daily self-reflection, asking myself, what do I want and need now? I'm not dealing with absolutes. My desire for solitude constantly changes, just as my desire for social interaction does. This ongoing self-exploration helps me balance solitude and being with people, and the more I stay true to myself, the healthier my relationship with myself and others becomes. Being alone is not pleasant. Being around people and wishing to be alone is also not good. Changing the situation requires courage. In relation to solitude, it takes courage to admit the situation and dissatisfaction and step out of the comfort zone. When it comes to your desire for solitude, it takes courage to acknowledge that need and step away from social life, even if only for a while, or even to admit that the people around you cause more harm than good, especially in cases of abuse. Following the call to solitude, or at least separation from the abuser, may be the best thing to do. The question is, of course, whether you are willing and able to walk away. Sadly, many people fear being alone. But what is there to fear if basic needs like food, shelter, and safety are met? If you learn to feel comfortable and happy being alone, the less likely you are to cling to others, the less power they will have over you, and the easier it will be to expel those narcissistic abusers and other toxic people. It is better to be alone than to wish for company, because in solitude we find the strength we thought we needed. I hope this video has been an enriching experience for you, exploring the fascinating world of solitude and its many facets. If you enjoyed the content and found value in our reflections, I invite you to leave a like, subscribe for more similar content, and share your thoughts in the comments section. Your support means a lot to us and helps us continue exploring deep topics like this one. See you next time.